Welcome to our deep dive today into the Book of Five Rings.
By Miyamoto Musashi.
Yeah, by Miyamoto Musashi. This is really a fascinating book, and it's not just about sword fighting, which you might think it is at first.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's really a deep exploration of strategy and philosophy and leadership.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me that a book written by a 17th century samurai can still be so relevant today, you know?
It is fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you would think swordsmanship wouldn't be so applicable to the 21st century, but Musashi's ideas about strategy and mindset are surprisingly applicable to so many challenges that we face.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he was undefeated in over 60 duels.
Yeah.
He was a Ronin,
Mhm.
a masterless samurai,
Right.
but he was also seeking enlightenment through the way of the sword.
And that context is really important to understand,
Yeah.
Musashi lived in a very, very fascinating time in Japanese history. This was a period of transition, really, from chaotic civil wars to the very rigid order of the Tokugawa shogunate.
So a time of massive upheaval and change.
Exactly, yeah, massive upheaval and change. And in this society, samurai were at the top of the social hierarchy, but many of them, like Musashi, were masterless. They were ronin, so they were seeking purpose and patronage, and they really had to rely on their skills and their wits to survive.
So swordsmanship wasn't just a hobby, it was a matter of life and death.
Exactly, yeah, precisely.
Wow.
And that is really why I think the Book of Five Rings is so compelling. It's not just some kind of theoretical treatise. It's really a distillation of this hard-won wisdom forged in the fires of experience.
Yeah, and I think something that's really fascinating about this book is it's structured in such an interesting way.
Yeah,
It's divided into 5 books: Earth, Water, Fire, Wind, and Void.
the five elements.
Yeah, it's almost like he's using these elements as metaphors
Absolutely, as
for
meta.
different aspects of strategy.
Yeah, and what's brilliant is how these elements, these elements that seem so simple on the surface, actually hold such deep meaning. Like if we look at Earth, for example, it lays the foundation.
Yeah.
It emphasizes the importance of mastering the fundamentals, of understanding both the big picture, the overall strategy, but also the smallest details, the tactics.
Yeah, that resonates with me. No matter what you're doing, whether you're playing an instrument or running a business, you've got to have that solid foundation.
Absolutely. And then we have water. And water speaks to adaptability, the need to be fluid and responsive, just like water, changing to fit any situation.
I love that. The idea of being flexible and going with the flow rather than trying to force your will on the world.
It is beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Recognizing that the only constant is change and that the ability to adapt is absolutely crucial for both survival and success. Then we have fire, which obviously brings to mind the intensity of combat,
Right,
the decisiveness and focus that are needed in the heat of battle.
right. And he talks about making very quick and decisive actions,
He does,
in
yeah.
the Fire book, which makes perfect sense, right, in a life or death situation.
Yeah, absolutely. But he also emphasizes, the need to very carefully assess the situation before you act.
Yeah.
It's not just about being impulsive. It's about calculated aggression, I think you could call it.
So there's a balance there between the intensity of action and the need for strategic thinking.
Exactly, yeah. Then we move to wind, which is really interesting because wind is all about understanding other schools of thought,
Right,
not just your own.
right.
So Musashi believed that you needed to know your enemy just as well as you knew yourself.
That's so fascinating because it suggests that, to be a great strategist, you can't just be strong yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to understand your opponent's strengths and weaknesses as well.
You do. It's about recognizing that you can actually learn from anyone, even your enemies. And by understanding their ways, you can better anticipate their moves and counter them effectively.
Yeah. And then finally, we have Void, which is the most abstract.
Yes, the most esoteric.
And perhaps, maybe the most difficult to grasp.
It is. It is.
What did Musashi mean by void?
That's a great question. He described it as a state of emptiness, the ability to act instinctively, free from preconceptions and limitations.
So it's like you're achieving a state of pure awareness where you're not bound by your thoughts or your emotions, but simply present in the moment.
Exactly, yeah. And Musashi believed that cultivating this state of mind, this void, was absolutely essential to mastering the way of strategy, both on and off the battlefield.
So these 5 books provide a framework for understanding Musashi's approach to strategy, mindset, and leadership. but I'm curious to delve a little deeper into how these concepts can actually be applied in a more practical sense.
Let's do it. I think you'd be surprised at how relevant these centuries-old ideas are to the challenges that we face today.
Yeah, I'm ready. So we've got this framework of the 5 books, Earth, Water, Fire, Wind, and Void. But how do those concepts actually translate into, real-world strategy? What are some specific examples of Musashi's teachings that we can apply to our own lives?
Well, one of the most powerful concepts I think that Musashi introduces is this idea of knowing the times.
Okay.
And he talks about this a lot in the Earth book.
Okay.
And it's about understanding the rhythm of a situation,
Right.
the ebb and flow of energy, and choosing the most advantageous moment to act.
So it's not just about reacting.
Right.
It's about being more proactive and strategic with your timing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Musashi gives the example of a warrior, facing an opponent. And he says it's not always about striking first.
Right.
It's about striking at the right time when your opponent is off balance or vulnerable.
Okay, so that makes sense in a fighting context.
Yeah.
But how would you apply that, knowing the times, to a more everyday situation, like a business negotiation, for example?
Well, think about it this way. You wouldn't just barge into a negotiation and immediately lay out all your demands, right?
Yeah.
You would take some time to assess the situation, to gauge the other party's mood and receptiveness, and you'd look for the most opportune moment to present your case.
So it's about kind of reading the room, so to speak.
Exactly.
Sensing the energy, the dynamics of the situation before you make your move.
Exactly. It's about being observant and patient and strategic in your timing. And I think that applies to all sorts of situations, from negotiating a deal to giving a presentation to even having a difficult conversation with someone.
Yeah, another concept that stood out to me was crossing at a ford.
Ah,
Can you explain what he meant by that?
sure. So this is one of Musashi's most famous metaphors, and it's all about choosing the best path forward,
Right.
even when you're faced with obstacles and uncertainty. So imagine you're a warrior and you're trying to cross a river.
Okay.
You wouldn't just blindly plunge in.
Right.
You would look for the shallowest point, the most advantageous place to cross.
So it's about being strategic in your approach even when things are unpredictable.
Absolutely. And it's not just about choosing the right path. It's also about being adaptable
Right.
and willing to change course if the situation demands it.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best laid plans go awry and you have to be able to adjust on the fly.
So it's like having a roadmap, but being willing to deviate from it
Exactly.
if you encounter unexpected obstacles or opportunities.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. Musashi believed that true mastery wasn't about rigidly adhering to a plan. It was about being flexible and responsive to those ever-changing circumstances.
That's such a valuable lesson for anyone we all have to deal with, unexpected challenges and setbacks in life, and being able to adapt and adjust our course is essential for success.
Yeah, it's a key element of resilience. And speaking of resilience, Musashi also had a lot to say about the mental and emotional aspects of swordsmanship,
Right.
which, as you might imagine, are incredibly important in a life or death situation.
Right. You can't just be physically strong. You have to be mentally and emotionally prepared as well.
Exactly. And one of the key qualities that Musashi emphasized was composure. He believed that maintaining a calm and focused mind, even in the face of danger, was absolutely crucial for making sound decisions and executing your strategy effectively.
So not letting your emotions get the better of you.
Right.
Easier said than done, especially when you're under pressure.
It definitely takes practice, but Musashi provides some really interesting insights into how to cultivate that inner stillness.
Yeah.
He talks about the importance of proper breathing and posture and even visualization techniques to help train the mind to stay calm and focused under duress.
So it's almost like a form of meditation.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he talks about the need to quiet the mind, to eliminate distractions and anxieties, and to just focus your attention on the present moment.
And I can see how that would be beneficial, not just in combat, but in any high-pressure situation.
Absolutely.
Whether you're giving a presentation or
Mhm.
taking an exam or even just having a difficult conversation with someone,
Yeah.
being able to stay calm and focused can make a huge difference.
It really can. And Musashi believed that cultivating this mental discipline was a lifelong pursuit,
Right.
a process of constantly refining your awareness and control over your thoughts and emotions.
So it's not something you achieve overnight. It's an ongoing practice.
It is, and I think that's one of the most profound insights from the Book of Five Rings.
Yeah.
Mastery isn't a destination, it's a journey.
I love that it's about constantly striving to improve and to refine your skills and to cultivate a mindset that will allow you to face any challenge with clarity and composure.
Exactly. And Musashi believed that this pursuit of mastery wasn't just about becoming a better swordsman, it was about becoming a better human being.
That's a beautiful way to think about it.
And it leads us to another key aspect of Musashi's teachings, this idea that true strength comes not just from physical prowess, but also from self-knowledge.
What do you mean by self-knowledge in this context?
Well, Musashi believed that it was essential to know your own strengths and weaknesses, your tendencies and your limitations.
Okay.
He emphasized the importance of honest self-reflection and self-assessment.
So it's not just about knowing your enemy, it's also about knowing yourself.
Exactly. And he argues that if you're aware of your weaknesses, you can work to overcome them, or at least compensate for them.
Right.
And if you understand your strengths, you can leverage them to your advantage.
That makes me think about how often we focus on our shortcomings.
Yeah.
On the things that we're not good at.
Right.
Rather than appreciating and developing our strengths, it's like we're constantly comparing ourselves to others and coming up short.
That's a very common trap.
Yeah.
But Musashi encourages us to really embrace our individuality, to recognize that we all have our own unique gifts and abilities to offer the world.
So it's about finding your own path, your own way of expressing your strengths and contributing to the world.
Precisely. And that leads us to one of the most challenging and intriguing concepts in the Book of Five Rings.
Right.
This idea of void.
Yeah, I'll admit I'm still struggling to wrap my head around this one.
Yeah.
What did Musashi mean by void, and how can we apply this concept to our own lives?
He describes it as this state of emptiness, of pure awareness, free from preconceptions and limitations. It's about letting go of our attachment to outcomes, to our preconceived notions of how things should be, and to our ego's desire to control everything.
So it's about surrendering to the present moment.
Yeah.
About accepting what is rather than resisting it.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And Musashi believed that this state of void wasn't just some philosophical ideal. It was something that could be cultivated through practice and discipline.
But how do you actually practice void?
Yeah.
It seems so abstract and elusive.
It is a very abstract concept, but Musashi talks about the importance of mindfulness, of paying attention to the present moment without judgment.
Right.
He also emphasizes the need to let go of limiting beliefs and fears, to detach from the outcome of your actions, and to really cultivate a sense of inner stillness and peace.
So it's about training the mind to be more present, more aware, and less reactive to our thoughts and emotions.
Exactly. And while achieving this state of void might seem like a very lofty goal, Musashi believed that it was accessible to anyone who was willing to put in the effort and the practice.
So it's a lifelong journey of self-discovery and refinement.
It is, and I think it's one of the most powerful and transformative teachings in the Book of Five Rings.
It's so fascinating, but I'm also curious about how Musashi's ideas about strategy and leadership really translate into the modern world. I mean, we're not samurai warriors facing off in duels anymore. How can we apply these concepts to the challenges we face in our daily lives, in our careers, our relationships, our personal growth?
That's a great question, and it's something we can definitely delve into. I think you'll be surprised at how relevant these centuries-old principles can be in navigating the complexities of 21st century life.
I'm eager to explore that further.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about Musashi's ideas about strategy and mindset and this really intriguing concept of void. But I'm curious, how does all this translate to our lives today? What are some like concrete examples? Like how can we apply Musashi's wisdom in the 21st century?
Well, let's go back to knowing the times for a second.
Okay.
We talked about it in the context of a negotiation.
Right.
But it really applies to so many different areas of life. Think about launching a new product, for example.
Okay.
Musashi would tell you to really study the market, understand the trends, and choose the most opportune moment to make your move.
Yeah.
It's not just about, having a great product. It's about timing your entry into the market in a very strategic way.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting way to think about it. It's like so many factors contribute to success.
Yeah.
And timing is often overlooked.
It is. And it applies to personal relationships as well. Knowing when to speak up, when to listen, when to assert yourself, when to compromise. These are all crucial skills in navigating the complexities of human interaction.
Right.
And Musashi's emphasis on observation and awareness can be incredibly helpful in developing those skills.
It's like he's encouraging us to be more mindful, more attuned to those subtle cues and signals
Exactly.
that are always present in our interactions.
Absolutely. And what about crossing at a ford?
Right.
We talked about that, and that metaphor is all about making strategic decisions, when faced with uncertainty.
Right.
and being willing to adapt as the situation evolves. I
Yeah.
think that's so relevant in today's world.
Yeah,
It's so fast-paced, ever-changing.
we're constantly being bombarded with new information,
Right.
new challenges, new opportunities. It can feel really overwhelming at times.
It can. But Musashi's teachings really offer a way to navigate all of that complexity.
Yeah.
He reminds us that it's okay to change course, to adjust our plans, and even to completely abandon a path if it's no longer serving us.
Yeah.
It's not about being rigid or dogmatic. It's about being flexible and responsive to the ever-changing circumstances.
That resonates a lot with me because it's so easy to get stuck in our routines, our habits, our ways of thinking.
Yeah.
But sometimes the most courageous and strategic move is to just let go of what's no longer working and embrace a new direction.
Absolutely. And Musashi also reminds us that true strength comes not just from external achievements, but also from this internal mastery.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. He emphasizes the importance of self-awareness,
Right.
of understanding our own strengths and weaknesses, our passions, our fears. And he believed that by really honestly assessing ourselves, we could cultivate our strength, address our weaknesses, and become more well-rounded and effective individuals.
Like he's saying, the greatest battle we'll ever fight is the battle within ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that by mastering our own minds and emotions, we can overcome any obstacle,
Right.
achieve any goal.
Yeah. And that brings us back to this concept of void, which is such a powerful idea. I'm still trying to grasp how it applies practically.
Well, think of it as a state of mental clarity and stillness, a space that's free from the clutter of our thoughts and our anxieties and limiting beliefs. It's about being fully present in the moment,
Okay.
without judgment
Yeah.
or attachment to outcomes.
It sounds a lot like the concept of mindfulness, which is so popular these days.
It is similar, yeah. And Musashi believed that cultivating the state of void was essential
Yeah.
for making sound decisions,
Hmm.
for acting with clarity, with precision,
Right.
and for responding to challenges with grace and equanimity.
So it's not just about emptying the mind, but it's about creating space
Yeah,
for wisdom and insight to emerge.
exactly. It's about cultivating a state of mental and emotional balance
Yeah.
that allows us to navigate the complexities of life with greater awareness, compassion, and effectiveness.
This has been such an enriching deep dive into the Book of Five Rings. It's amazing how a text that was written centuries ago can still offer so much wisdom and guidance for us today. What are some final takeaways you'd like to leave our listener with?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that Musashi's teachings aren't just about swordsmanship.
Right.
They're about life.
Yeah.
They're about understanding these principles of strategy, mindset, leadership, and applying those principles to any challenge that we face, right?
Right.
Whether you're running a business or negotiating a deal or raising a family or just simply trying to navigate your own personal journey, Musashi's wisdom can offer really, really invaluable insights and guidance.
He encourages us to be lifelong learners,
Yes.
to constantly strive for improvement, to embrace change, and to cultivate that mindset of resilience and adaptability and self-mastery.
And perhaps most importantly, he reminds us that the journey of mastery is not about achieving some static state of perfection, but it's about constantly striving and growing and evolving,
Yeah.
both as individuals and as a society.
That's a powerful message to end on. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and your expertise with us today.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Book of Five Rings. We hope you found it as insightful and thought-provoking as we have. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep striving to master your own way.